Let's take an early look at the fatal helicopter crash of a Robinson R44 that occurred near the city of Houston, Texas on Sunday evening, October 20th. We know that it was a 2002 Robinson R44, November 881 Kilo Echo, and tragically all 4 souls on board perished in this accident. From examining the FlightAware track history for this Robinson R44, we know that the aircraft took off from Ellington Airport just southeast of Houston Hobby, proceeded north and then northwest on a heading of about 290 before the impact with this tower. We also know from FlightAware's track history that this same helicopter flew 5 other times that day. What we don't know is if the same pilot flew all 6 flights that day. Local security camera video caught the helicopter's collision with the tower, and you can see that the helicopter appears to be straight and level as it proceeds towards this obstruction, and the landing light of the helicopter actually starts to illuminate the tower just before the moment of impact. You can also notice that obstruction lighting was visible just below the point of impact and just above the point of impact. Local news reporting reported several days after the mishap the information about the fatalities, and we know that the pilot had a commercial helicopter certificate with helicopter instrument rating. She was also a certificated flight instructor and held a Class 2 medical, which would have been required for the Part 91 sightseeing operation. The NTSB will look at many factors in this tragic mishap, including weather, obstructions, the pilot's training and proficiency, her familiarity with the area at night, etc. Weather that night seemed to be beautiful. It was 4,000-foot few clouds, 10 miles of visibility, with a light breeze out of the southeast at about 9 knots. We don't believe weather was a factor this night. In fact, it was a beautiful night for a helicopter flight around Houston. NTSB will also look at obstructions as the primary cause, obviously. As the helicopter proceeded northwest, the sectional chart clearly depicts 3 of the obstacles in that area of Houston that extend above 1,000 feet AGL. There's also 2 obstructions that extend to 900 feet and at least 5 obstructions that go to 500 or 600 feet just to the west of the city. The helicopter impacted the first of the tall obstructions. On the sky vector flyway chart, you can also see that the 3 1,000-foot obstacles are displayed. The flyway chart also provides VFR corridors just above and to the east of the Class B airspace at Hobby Airport. And the Houston helicopter route chart, which is probably most used by helicopter pilots, provides much more information. In addition to the obstacles that we saw on the sectional, the helicopter route chart provides helicopter routes. The helicopter here, in this case, the R44, proceeded northwest and crossed over helicopter route 1 and went parallel to and just to the north of helicopter route 5. Both of these helicopter routes are at an altitude of no higher than 800 feet, so 800 feet and below is normal. It also provides the frequency of 118.7, which was heard on the audio for this mishap. What's important to note is that the helicopter routes are overlying major highways and thoroughfares, which are very easy to see at night. And if you stay over the highway, you're obviously not going to hit any obstructions or guy wires. We can see that it's common to fly 800 feet and below as depicted on the route chart. This helicopter was not following the routes, but that's not uncommon for this type of a tour around the city of Houston. And finally, the route of flight to the helicopter impacted the very first of the 1,000-foot obstructions. The other 2 are just to the west of this one on the north side of Houston. The NTSB will also look at NOTAMs for this flight, and there was a notice to air mission published for this tower that was impacted. The NOTAM was for a tower light being unserviceable, and it was in effect from October 17th to October 31st. The NTSB may discount this because we did see from the video that the helicopter impacted between 2 lights that were actually operable at the time of collision. The NTSB will also look at other factors in this mishap. They'll consider the pilot's pre-flight planning and her knowledge of the area around Houston. They'll look at her currency and proficiency and whether or not fatigue may have been a factor. So based on the data available to us only a week after this tragic mishap, it's clear that this was a collision with a fixed obstacle or controlled flight into terrain. The NTSB could also categorize this as a low-altitude operation flight, but we believe it'll be a CFIT. A good review of what's out there in the accident trend data and some resources for pilots in order right now. So we know from all fixed wing and rotorcraft data that controlled flight into terrain is the number 4 leading cause of all mishaps. We know that low altitude operations is the number 9 leading cause of all mishaps. In the helicopter-only database, this is from the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team, we know that low altitude operations is the number 3 leading cause of mishaps, right behind unintentional IMC and loss of control. We also know that there were 78 mishaps since 2008 that involved helicopter sightseeing operations, and 14 of those were fatal. It's important to review all the information available to pilots that could help us prevent these tragic mishaps. Most basically, the legend on a VFR sectional provides all the information we need to understand what the symbols depict on the sectional. In the case of 1,000-foot obstacles, it appears as a sloped arrowhead with a dot underneath, and those represent 1,000-foot or higher AGL obstacles. Obstacles from 299 to 1,000 feet appear as an upside-down V or a TP with a dot underneath, and we also know that groupings appear as those symbols connected at the bottom. They may or may not be lit, and it's important, therefore, to check the chart for NOTAMs. It's also important to understand what the FAA prescribes for lighting requirements on these obstacles. In the Advisory Circular 7460-1 Lima, it says that any structure exceeding 150 feet in height is required to have a light on the top and then equidistant to the surface, lights every 150 feet. Now, this is not something pilots would typically review because this is an advisory circular aimed for regulators, airport sponsors, and airport managers. But it's important to know what the requirements are. It appears that this tower had 1 or more lights in op, but the 2 lights that were still lit were right below and right above the impact point for this helicopter. Something more accessible to pilots may be the data found on some handheld software, in this case ForeFlight. If pilot selects in the map layers under map settings, select NOTAMs, what will come up on the route of flight are little taco chips or NOTAM obstruction symbols that appear below every obstacle that has a NOTAM on it. Simply touching that symbol will open up the NOTAM for this obstacle, and this is the same thing we saw a moment ago, which is the NOTAM for that tower that's in effect from 1017 to 1031. This is a very nice way for pilots to check obstacles along the route of flight, left or right or directly below. Resources available to pilots and specifically to the helicopter flying community. Vertical Aviation International has ample information on their website providing safety resources and safety programs. Another excellent source is Vertical Aviation Safety Team, an organization closely aligned with VAI. And on the VAST website, we found that there was one best practice that talked about preventing wire strikes and the 10 key principles. 5 of the key principles here are in black, and 4 of these 5 are directly linked to what may have prevented this mishap in Houston. And finally, the U.S. Helicopter Safety Team has excellent resources online and safety products and safety alerts and safety notices. The U.S. Helicopter Safety Team is a nonprofit volunteer team of government industry stakeholders dedicated to improving civil helicopter safety. So what can we learn from this tragic mishap? The value of pre-flight planning cannot be overstated. That pre-flight planning should include a thorough review of the charts, whether it's the terminal air chart or the flyway chart, or in this case, the helicopter route charts. A careful review of all NOTAMs is critically important on every flight, especially in the low altitude regime when obstructions or lighting NOTAMs could affect what you can see. If you're a pilot flying in sightseeing operations, it's important to be mindful of any possible distractions coming from your non-pilot passengers. And finally, when flying low altitude at night, it's critical to remember that obstructions may be masked by the city lights. In this case, the city of Houston may have masked or obstructed the presence of the lights on this tower that was collided with. The NTSB will take up to the next 2 years to fully investigate this tragic mishap, and they'll publish their probable cause at that time. Thank you.